You are listening to the Space-Tastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Lyne's fourth novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Smoke and Mirrors. A deadly sniper stalks the stars. Aboard the Freedom Alliance's frontline StarVessels, crew members are being picked off one by one, the killer striking with chilling precision. When a member of Colonel Jessa Master's team is critically wounded, the threat becomes personal and impossible to ignore. Jessa is no stranger to danger, but this case rattles her. The sniper's methods seem hauntingly familiar, echoing a nearly forgotten nightmare from 9 years ago at the Freedom Alliance admission office, a tragedy she has tried to bury. Is it the same killer, back to settle unfinished business? Or is she chasing shadows conjured by her own haunted memory? As paranoia spreads through the fleet, Jessa must unravel a mystery that spans years and light years, navigating political intrigue, old grudges, and a ruthless enemy who always seems one step ahead. Stopping the sniper means confronting her own past and catching a ghost before he kills again. This is episode 5, A Possible Reason? If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
Agents James and Patricia, J and P for short, hadn't been partners very long. In fact, P was a rookie agent, and as cocky as she could be. She had just graduated the training program and thought she knew everything. She had been assigned to J, a seasoned agent, who had logged more time catching bad guys than sleeping, I recalled, sipping my hot cocoa as I smiled at Nate. He waited for her out by his precious car that meant more to him than life itself. He looked P up and down, not sure what to make of her. She didn't look like she could handle the bad guys, but J had learned from experience that looks could be deceiving. Looks were definitely deceiving in P's case because she could take down the bad guys better than most seasoned agents, but P had a wild look in her eyes. She was looking for trouble and intended to find it, Nate added, staring at me as he sipped his own mug. He winced as the hot liquid seared his tongue. Then the general assigned them the Tominelli case. Tominelli was a well-known terrorist that had escaped from prison. He was headed to the United States, their sources said, to get revenge. J and P had to stop him, but would they get there in time? J drove around town, asking people if they knew anything about Tominelli. Unlikely people like the pretzel man in the park, the bus driver, the crossing guard, but P knew these people had to be his family. That's what we in the intelligence community call our eyes and ears, I continued, blowing hard on my hot cocoa. Tominelli was indeed in the United States, Jay's family informed him. Washington, D.C. to be exact, Nate piped up, dunking one of his marshmallows into the hot cocoa. J and P exhausted every possible contact and gave up for the day. J drove P back to HQ. He had a date with a pretty young blonde flight attendant in town for one night. I playfully hit him in the arm. On the way home, J sensed something was wrong with P, so he turned around and headed back to find her, Nate continued, popping the marshmallow in his mouth. What happened? The kids cried in unison. As he drove up to HQ, he saw a man grab P from behind. She struggled, kicking him furiously. He shoved her in his van. Jay chased the van but lost it several blocks away. I picked up the story again, watching the kids over my mug. They seemed to be hanging on my every word as they drank their cocoa. He went back to HQ. He marched into the section chief's office and told him that he had lost that rookie the chief assigned him. That's when the chief's communication device chimed. After a few seconds, he handed it to Jay. The man on the other end of the phone told Jay, "We have your partner. Bring $1 billion if you ever want to see her alive. Drop it off at a building off Rhode Island Avenue." Then the man gave him the address and hung up. Nate added some more marshmallows to his cocoa, bombing the mug like an airstrike attack on an uncooperative country. Jay and the chief hurried to the scene. When they arrived, they realized that the drop-off spot was an old industry warehouse marked for bulldozing. They crept inside, looking in one closet then another, opening one door then another until they found a freezer. When they opened the freezer door, they couldn't believe what they saw. He nodded for me to continue as he drank his cocoa. The kids' eyes were glued on my face, anxiously awaiting the next part of the story. Inside the freezer, which stayed at a constant temperature of 40 degrees Fahrenheit, stood P holding a gun to Tominelli's head. He was tied up with P's handcuffs. She looked over at Jay and the chief and said, "It's about time you showed up. I've been stuck in here because the door wouldn't open." From that day forward, Jay never questioned P's abilities as an agent again. Together Jay and P put that terrorist and his gang, which he was willing to rat out for a lighter sentence, behind bars, where they remain to this day. Once again, Jay and P rid the earth of several more bad people. The end. "Wow, Mama, what a great story," Remy complimented, then finished off his cocoa, yawning. "Can we hear another?" "Now it's time for bed, but maybe Nate and I could be persuaded to tell you another J and P adventure tomorrow night," I replied, moving deeper under the covers. "Have you brushed your teeth?" "Yes," they chorused. "Good night, then, Remy, Angel, Jag. I love you all," I declared. When each had said their good nights, I instructed the computer, "Chip, reduce light to night setting." The lights went out, leaving our pupils trying to adjust. We could hear whispering. "I wonder what they are discussing," I asked Nate in a hushed tone. "Mama, Nate," Remy's voice pierced through the darkness. "Yes," we responded. I leaned on my hand to look over in his direction. I felt Nate feel for my other hand. "Chip, raise light level 2 settings." "Nate, Reggie already calls you Papa. Would it be okay if I did too?" Silence ensued as I watched Nate's rugged features melt and his eyes start to mist. Our eyes locked and, for the briefest of moments, he almost seemed as if he needed my approval. "It's okay," I mouthed to him. My lips spread into a big smile. I squeezed his hand. It was one thing for me, the biological mother of Regina, to hear Remy call me Mama, but it was quite another for Nate, who had no born biological children, to refer to him as Papa. It would be like the first time I heard Reggie say Mom. That incredible, worthwhile feeling that warms your body like only 3 other words can. "I love you." "You betcha," came Nate's answer, fighting back tears. "Now go to sleep, and we will talk about it tomorrow." He tried to keep his voice steady, but I could tell he was losing the battle with his tears. "Chip, lower the lights to night setting," I told them as the children snuggled into their makeshift beds. I didn't want Nate to be embarrassed by crying. A few seconds later, his tears flowed freely. I moved closer to Nate, wiping them away with my thumb, kissing every stained inch of his cheeks. "You'd better get used to it," I whispered close to his ear, grabbing his hand and putting it on my stomach. "We are adding 2 more to this fold. And these 2 are going to call you Daddy." "And call you Mommy," Nate agreed, just as the twins kicked. Nate kissed me full on the lips. One kiss led to 2 and 3 until I put my hand on his chest and gently pushed him away. "This is not the time for that." I rested my head next to his, so that we shared a pillow. "I love the kids, you know that, and I am glad they are sleeping in here, but you and I haven't been together," drawing quotes in the air with his fingers, "in such a long time." "I miss it," he said next to my ear. "So do I, but have you looked at me?" "I am a house," I noted, kissing him lingeringly. "What?" he questioned, twirling my hair around his finger. "You are always so beautiful when you are pregnant." "I am 7 months pregnant with twins." "I am a house." "How about tomorrow night?" asked Nate, then he scrunched up his face. "Is it okay to be together when you are this far along?" "I mean, I know it is okay with a single child, but we are expecting twins. Maybe we should be discussing this with Dr. Manning." I rolled my eyes. "Oh no, I am not discussing this," I chided, waving between Nate and me, with him. "The man wants me to take the next 2 months and evaluate my life on my back. He wants me to turn total control of this vessel over to you for the next 2 months." I kissed him on the cheek. "I love you, but as long as I am feeling fine, I am not going to stop working." "Of course not. Promise me that the first time you feel discomfort, you are going to tell me. I don't want you keeping anything from me, okay?" I didn't say anything, wondering if I should tell him about the stomachache that had started plaguing me a few minutes ago. I decided against it. It would probably be over by the time I woke up in the morning. What did I eat that was new? Just the fruit juice that the chef sent me, but it couldn't have been that. Fruit juice was good for me and the babies. Lots of vitamins. Peak. I shook my head, breaking myself from my thoughts. What did he say? Oh yeah, the promise to tell him the minute I felt discomfort. Yeah, I promise to tell you if I feel anything strange. So what does your schedule look like tomorrow? Let's see, at 0500 hours, I am going jogging with you, then there's the meeting at 0900 hours. My shift in Command Central starts at 0700 and ends at 1500 hours. At 1530 hours, I have a racquetball game with our son, so I have tomorrow night free. What did you have in mind? That's when I realized Nate fell asleep. I kissed his cheek, snuggling next to him. There was nowhere else in the universe that I wanted to be than in my husband's arms, my children lying on the floor next to me and Colin and Joey in the quarters next door. It was perfect. And it was that perfectness that had me worried because nothing stayed perfect forever. I barely slept a wink the entire night when Chip announced that it was 0430 hours. My stomach felt like a boat being tossed around in choppy waters. Despite the pain in my stomach, I kept going over the case in my head, the victims, their locations, the description Bree gave me. It sounded like the same man. The man I met 9 years ago at the Freedom Alliance Academy. I cringed at the memory. The people who he shot had to be related, and if this was the same man, I knew how. And if I was right, which I was sure I was, I knew that Malcolm Danes had not finished his list of intended victims. I pulled back the covers and climbed out of bed. I grabbed my robe off the bedpost and slipped it on. I maneuvered my way around the sleeping children to the doors. Remy and Reggie looked so peaceful as they slept on our floor. All bad dreams vanished somehow just by sleeping on the ground next to us. After I walked through the doors, I headed down the hall and into the living room. I paced from one end of the room to another. Back and forth, back and forth. My mind spun the same web again and again. Every time I came to the same conclusion: if this was the same man I met 9 years ago, I was on his list of intended victims. Graham and I never discussed what happened that day. Not once in 9 years. After the investigation, we vowed never to speak of that day again, not to anyone. I was going to have to break that vow, but exactly what choice did I have? I pivoted, heading in the opposite direction when Nate grabbed my arm. You want to tell me what this is all about? Because I am sure that all this pacing and not sleeping all night isn't good for you or our babies, he whispered, pulled me against his chest and rubbed my back. Tell me what's bothering you. Graham made me promise not to discuss that day with anyone, including you, but it's going to have to come out anyway. He held me at arm's length, studying my face for the answers he sought. Peek, what are you talking about? I'm talking about Malcolm Danes. Graham and I have met him before. What? Met him before? If Graham told you not to discuss it, the circumstances couldn't have been pleasant. You don't know how unpleasant the circumstances were. Why don't you try telling me? I could see the anger flashing in his eyes. He hated when anyone kept things from him, especially me. I turned my face from him. I couldn't stand to see the hurt and anger in his eyes, knowing that I caused those emotions. I was helping Graham conduct a workshop at the academy. You were on vacation. We were in the admissions office, ready to call it a day, when a man came in and started shooting. Graham and I sneaked up on him. I told him to drop the weapon, a Kraken Series precision Gauss sniper. He had it on the close range setting. I shook my head, turning back to meet his gaze. What happened? Nate prompted in a gentler voice. I took a deep breath. I could still see the scene so vividly in my mind. Now it was back in vivid color. He didn't stop shooting. He didn't care who he hurt. He just kept shooting, then he turned the weapon on Graham and me. Graham said something he didn't like. He shot at Graham. I lunged in front of him, shooting at Malcolm Danes just as I caught a dart in my arm. He fell to the ground. He didn't get up. Even the hospital doctors pronounced him dead. I lifted my head and looked into Nate's eyes, clenching my teeth. He let me believe he was dead for 3 years. He let me believe that I killed him. How did you find out he was alive? Nate inquired, touching my hair with his hand. I was called to serve jury duty on a case the Freedom Alliance was trying. When I saw him, I almost fainted. Here was the man I thought I killed. Needless to say, I was disqualified. Holding my stomach, I turned around one of the dining room chairs and sat down in it. If my guess is right, outside of Bree and my brothers, all his other victims are from that jury. He was silent for a moment. I could see the wheels spinning in his mind. He bent down next to the chair, stroking my cheek with the back of his hand. Assuming you are right, where do your brothers and Bree fit in? Bree is the person who put him away, and my brothers were eyewitnesses at the trial. But if he only hit 10 jury members, that would mean there are more intended victims, concluded Nate. A horrified look flickered in his eyes. He stared at me for a moment, scrutinizing my face. You think he might come after you, don't you?